It is 1 o'clock. We will see if somebody or some people show up. Hey, Chaz is here. Ricardo's here. We'll wait a few minutes, see who else comes.
Did you get my email?
When did you send it?
Like last week. I sent you my Unit 4 worksheet.
Yeah, I think I got it. Let me double check while we're waiting.
And then I put my Unit 5 worksheet in that basket at the schoolhouse.
Yeah, that's gonna be a bit crazy. Hold on a minute. I
have pictures of that one too.
Okay, yeah, I'm probably gonna ask you to send those in a little bit.
Okay.
You sent it on March 24th, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it now. I don't know why I didn't see it earlier. All right, I'll print that off, and as soon as we're done, I'll grade that.
Okay.
Tez, did you say something about Unit 5?
Yeah. I put that in a basket at school.
Oh yeah, that's right. But you said you took pictures of it.
Do what?
Yeah.
Do you want me
Okay.
to take a picture?
I'm probably going to ask you to email those to me sometime today because the school, they're not going to let anybody go there for nobody knows how long. So it's probably be better to just send me those pictures when you can.
Here.
Matthew has joined us.
Okay. I'll send them.
Okay, sounds good.
Because when we came up there, they said that no teachers was in the building. So
Yeah, well, I was going to say it didn't all come down until after Friday, but they're not going to, since the governor's locking the whole state down, we don't know when they're going to let us come get those. And they said they already spent like a whole lot of money mailing stuff out, so they're probably not going to mail them out either. And even if they did, they said they'd have to wait 2 weeks because they got to wait to make sure any germs or viruses on the packets are dead. And they said that takes 2 weeks. So it's crazy.
Wait, so like I got a question.
Yeah.
So with these packets, like, do you just want us to do the 30 questions or like?
Yeah, it's still the same thing. You can decide which one you do. You can either do the 30 questions, or you can do the worksheet. If you do the 30 questions, the easiest way to do it is to type them up on a Google Doc and email that to me. If you do the worksheet, that's fine, as long as you take pictures of what you write and they're clear enough I can read what you write and I can grade that. So either way you want to do it.
All right.
Yeah, I'm waiting for packets from a bunch of people that shoot their grade up, 15 points or more for some of them. So it is 1:04, and I've got 5 people here, I think. Yep, there are 5 of us, which is better than this morning, so I'll take what I can get. I want to go ahead and get started, guys.
Sure.
All right. So what I've got in front of me are the notes from last Tuesday, which was the 24th, all the way up through today, March 30th. If you have any of those around you, that would be great. If not, I'll make do as best as I can. Is there anything in there that, stands out to you, like grabs your attention, didn't make sense, you have questions about, anything along those lines?
No, not really.
All right. If nobody says anything, what I'm probably going to do is I'm probably going to do like a quick little run through of them. Try maybe put some visuals up for you guys, and we can take it from there. How's that sound?
All right, that's cool.
All right. So let's see. Pretty much where we were supposed to pick back up was the Missouri Compromise. Remember, Unit 5, the whole point of Unit 5 is you have the United States getting closer and closer each day in the notes towards civil war. And a lot of people trace it back to the Missouri Compromise. As people are moving west across the country, the question becomes, what kind of states are those new ones going to be? Are they going to be free states? Are they going to be slave states? And Missouri wanted to become a state in 1820. The problem was there were 11 free states and there were 11 slave states. So whatever Missouri became would have thrown off the balance, and then one half of the country would have been pissed off at the other half. And so you have Henry Clay, the guy from the War of 1812, the War Hawk guy. I warned you to remember him because he's going to come back, and he's all throughout Unit 5. So Henry Clay comes up with this compromise where Missouri becomes a slave state, but to keep the North from flipping out, you're going to add Maine as a free state. Now, Maine had been part of Massachusetts up to that time, but if you break Maine off to become its own state, then you'll keep the balance of 12 slave states, 12 free states. The question is, what are you going to do with the rest of the West? And Clay had a plan for that too, which I'm going to show you real quick, so just bear with me while I pull it up. I'm getting a little better at this. The more you practice something, the better you get at it. So here we go. I think that'll work. Tab and present the whole screen. There we go. All right. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Okay. So what this is this is the map that Clay made up. All right. All the pink states are your slave states. And you can count them up, but I'm trying to save you all time. Just these are 12 slave states, and you got 12 free states. Territories don't count, so Michigan doesn't count, Florida doesn't count, Arkansas doesn't count. But the question is, what are you going to do in the future? So Clay says, let's take the bottom border of Missouri and extend that west throughout the United States. And everything north of that line will be free states. Everything south of that line will be slave states. You don't count any of this because this isn't part of the United States yet. So at the moment, nobody is upset, but some people are nervous, especially Southerners are nervous about the compromise going forward. Can somebody look at this map and tell me what would make a Southerner nervous looking at this?
I think like the different types of territories and stuff.
Okay. Elaborate.
So like maybe like some of the like territories don't like the Southerners or like the way that they do things?
Which side has more? Which side has more land?
Spanish.
But you don't count the Spanish part. Remember, they're not part of the
Oh, yeah.
United States yet. So you want to look at, like, for example, look at the Arkansas territory and then look at the unorganized territory. Which side's got more land?
Unorganized.
Right. And all that unorganized territory someday will become what kind of states?
Independent states.
Are they going to, well, you only got two options. They're either going to be free states or they're going to be slave states.
Oh yeah, free states.
They're going to be free states. So if there's more unorganized territory that will become states someday versus south of that line, the South is going to say, wait a minute, we're balanced today, but going forward into the future, we're not going to be balanced. Then we're going to get screwed. The North is going to get the better half of the deal. This is what made a lot of people nervous about the compromise, especially Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson. He's still alive at this time. And he said to one of his best friends, hey, this is going to really wreck the nation. We're going to become more and more divided over this. This is not going to work out well. But nobody listened to him. They kept the deal. They kept running. After this goes on, you have John Quincy Adams become president, talking about let's connect the different parts of the country together. Like when we were talking about the Erie Canal in the last unit, this is kind of that idea. But remember, John Quincy Adams doesn't last very long as president. He's replaced by Andrew Jackson, and Jackson hates this whole thing because remember, Jackson is from what part of the country? Does anyone remember?
Florida.
He fought in Florida, but he is not from Florida. But you're in the right part of the country.
Virginia.
You're closer. You're still in the right part of the country. To the south and west of Virginia and right to the left of North Carolina.
Shadewell, Virginia.
It's south and west of Virginia, and it's to the west of North Carolina. And West Virginia doesn't exist yet. Starts with a T.
Tennessee.
Yes. He is from right outside Nashville, Tennessee. And so he's a Southerner. He wants what other Southerners want, which is, the South should be left to do its own thing and the North should mind its own business kind of thing.
Wow.
Which kind of gets us into Jackson's presidency. Jackson is probably most people consider the most important and the most studied president between Jefferson and Lincoln, because he's the only president between that time who served 2 terms in office. The rest of them either got voted out after 1 term, 2 of them died. So Jackson kind of stands above the rest of them. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Pollen and allergies, nothing for anybody to freak out about. Yeah, I know. So it's funny though. Anytime someone sneezes or coughs now, everybody's all nervous.
For real.
So, yeah, I know. So Jackson comes in and he's got to deal with this really tense situation, which was in one of y'all's warm-ups a couple days ago, called the Tariff of Abominations. Any of you guys, I'm not looking it up right now, any of you guys do this warm-up already?
Yes, I have.
All right. And what state is this whole crisis revolving around?
I just did that warm up. I can't remember.
It's
It's
Massachusetts,
Hold on,
right?
let me look.
All right.
Massachusetts.
No, not Massachusetts.
Maine.
Nope, not Maine, not Massachusetts. Wrong part of the country.
South Carolina.
It is South Carolina. Very good, Songer.
Yeah.
So basically, this whole thing that South Carolina is pissed. They are hella pissed because like, have you guys ever heard like in church or somebody like an older person, say that something or someone is an abomination?
Yeah.
Okay, like when you hear that word abomination, what do you think of?
Like complete disaster or very hideous.
Yes, very good. So that is what South Carolina and the rest of the South call this new tariff that had been put into place right before Jackson became president. And does anyone remember what a tariff does?
Doesn't it isn't it like taxes or something?
It's a tax on imports.
Yeah.
And remember, the South doesn't like taxes on imports because they don't manufacture anything. They have to import all of their farm tools or building materials or clothes from other places. And it's cheaper for them to buy British and European goods. The problem is this tariff of abominations makes it too expensive to do that. Now they have to buy stuff from New England and the rest of the North. And so they're spending more money on stuff they don't want to, and they are pissed as all hell. And so South Carolina is the most pissed, and South Carolina threatens President Jackson. They say, hey, we're not going to collect these taxes. If you try to mess with us, we're going to secede from the United States. And that is a big deal because if you secede, that means you are breaking off from the United States. You're going to become your own country. Remember, New England had threatened this in the War of 1812, and they got punished politically for that. They never followed through with it, but now South Carolina looks like they mean it. Excuse me. And so Jackson says, I don't like the tariff, but I'm not going to put up with your bullcrap. He gets Congress to allow him to use force against South Carolina. He calls up the army, sends them to the border of South Carolina, puts warships in Charleston Harbor, and says, you think I'm bluffing? Go ahead and watch what happens. So it looks like a civil war is going to break out because Jackson ain't going to play these little games with them.
All right.
You have a senator from Massachusetts called Daniel Webster, and Webster hates Jackson because Webster's a Whig, Jackson's a Democrat, which I'll get into more in a little bit, but they hate each other. And so Webster makes a speech in Congress. He's like, look, I don't like him, but we have to keep the country together. He makes a speech. He says, liberty and union go together. If you take one apart, the other one falls apart too. They have to stay together. The country has to stay together. Let's work something out. And so Henry Clay comes back. Now he saves America again with another compromise. He says, let's lower the tariffs, but let's not lower them like this, because then it looks like South Carolina gets to celebrate and say, yeah, we got what we wanted. You can't mess with us. But Clay's like, let's ease it down slowly over time, and everybody can kind of keep their heads held high. And so everybody agrees to it. Jackson no longer has to use force. South Carolina gets the lower tariffs, and the country stays together. All right. This will not be the last time South Carolina is going to make a mess of things. So just remember that. We're going to talk about South Carolina jacking things up again a week from today. The other thing, Jackson's got a couple of other things he's got going on. The Native Americans in the Southeast. He wants their land, and I'm going to show you why in a minute. Let me pull this up real quick. That's kind of what I want. Yeah, that'll work. Let me present this again real quick. All right. You guys see this okay?
Yeah.
All right. All of the land in the dark green, like here, 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 these were lands that were still controlled by Native Americans when Jackson was president. I mean, like that's half of Mississippi. That's a big chunk of Florida, big chunk of Georgia, even a little bit of North Carolina, all in there. These were called the 5 civilized tribes, and they have them listed down here in the bottom. Cherokee, Creek, Chickasaw, Seminole, Choctaw. These were the 5 civilized tribes, and they were considered civilized because they had done what they thought they could do to fit in with white culture. They dressed like white people. Most of them learned English. They could read. They could write. They came up with their own tribal government that looked a lot like the American government with 3 branches and a Congress and all that. And since the climate down here was warm and moist, a lot of them farmed cotton and even owned slaves. They did everything they could, but Andrew Jackson says, no, this is prime real estate. We could make a lot of money if we kick them off the land and move them west to where it shows this Indian territory. Jackson said, if you go there peacefully, we'll leave you alone forever. No white people want this land out here in the west. We'll leave you alone. All right. Congress passed a law known as the Indian Removal Act that allowed him to do this. The Cherokee, which were headquartered out of northern Georgia, just to the north of Atlanta, they sued the feds and the state of Georgia. And the Supreme Court agreed with them. They said, hey, we signed a deal with the Cherokee that said we'll leave them alone in this land that I'm pointing to forever, and now you're going back on your word. Andrew Jackson said, well, that old fart John Marshall, he said that. Well, what army does he got? He doesn't have an army. Let him enforce it. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to kick him out anyway. Now, Jackson, if a president breaks the law like that, what can you do to a president who does that?
Can't you impeach him?
You can impeach him, but Congress decided not to impeach him, which means he got away with breaking the law, and he just did what he did. And you have all these Native Americans forced in all these weird routes. Most of them aren't even in straight lines because that drags out the process. And a lot of Native Americans will die before they make it to the Indian Territory, which is why this whole process is known as the Trail of Tears. About 4,000 of them died before they made it. So that's like Jackson's big black mark in history. There are tribes to this day that will not accept $20 bills on reservations because Andrew Jackson's face is on the $20 bill.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I don't really blame him, though. I mean, somebody who did that to your ancestors and all that.
Yeah, true.
So the last big thing Jackson's got is Jackson wants to kill the national bank. There has been a second national bank created. He doesn't like the national bank because he thinks it is an abuse of power by the national government. Remember, Jackson's from the South. The South doesn't like, probably will never like the idea of a big, bad federal government. So Jackson wants to kill the bank. And so when its license is up for renewal, Jackson vetoes it. So the bank's going to die on its own because its license is going to expire around 1840. I forget exactly when. But then he makes it die faster by telling people who owe it money, well, you can't pay the bill with paper money because paper money is crap. You have to pay in gold coins. People don't got gold coins. They're hard to get. That's, it's gold.
Yeah.
But Jackson doesn't care. Jackson knows this will kill the bank. Jackson doesn't sue any of the people who owe the bank. He's just like, hey, this is your get out of jail free card, and he winks at them kind of, sort of. So, they just get out of the debt, like the debt's canceled. and the national bank dies right before Jackson left office. Now, if you kill a national bank, what do you think that's going to do to the economy?
Mess it up.
It's going to mess it up really bad. But luckily for Jackson, he timed this out so it didn't die until right before he left. So when it messes up the economy, is Jackson going to be the one getting the blame for it?
Nope.
No, it's going to be the next guy who was his friend, Martin Van Buren. I'll get to in a minute. I just want to show you this little cartoon real quick about Jackson. So, share that. There we go. Can you guys see the little cartoon we got?
Yeah.
You see what they got Jackson dressed up like?
Okay.
Yeah. And can you see what he's stomping on?
Nose?
Let me see if I can zoom in on it. That's not what I want. Okay. So, can you see it now?
Those are like newspapers still.
The one says the Constitution of the United States.
Oh, I see.
Because remember, he broke the law when he defied the Supreme Court. And then the other thing he's stepping on is the U.S. Bank. So he's destroying these things that the cartoonist says are good for the United States. And if you see in his hand, he's holding a veto. Jackson vetoed more laws as president than I think all the other presidents before him put together. And so people who didn't like him saw that as an abuse of power. So the guy who took over from him was a guy by the name of Martin Van Buren, and he was Jackson's vice president. And since everybody liked Jackson, I mean, a lot of people did not, you know what I mean? Everybody said, well, let's vote for Van Buren because, you know, he's a friend of Jackson. Well, the economy sucked and Van Buren couldn't fix it. So you know what sucks about being president, right?
You get blamed for everything.
That's right. Anything bad that happens, it's automatically your fault. So they all blame the bad economy on Van Buren, even though it was Jackson's fault, not his. And so when it comes time for him to run for re-election in 1840, guess what's going to happen to Van Buren?
You're not going to get reelected.
Yeah, he's going to lose. He's going to lose to the guy who was one of the other war heroes of the War of 1812, William Henry Harrison. That guy who was the hero of Tippecanoe, he becomes president. He was the oldest president we ever had up to that time. And so people were cracking jokes on him. He was too old. He couldn't do his job. He was going to suck. And so when he gave his inauguration speech, he said, I'm going to show these clowns I know what I can do. And so he gives the longest inauguration speech ever, even to this day in American history. It was 2 or 2.5 hours long.
I couldn't sit there for that long.
I couldn't either. I'd be falling asleep after like 20 minutes.
Right.
So he does this outside in the cold in the middle of winter, no coat, no hat, and it's 35 degrees and it's raining hard. So he gets sick. And then people start making fun of him in the newspapers. Oh, man, that crazy old man, Harrison. Yeah, you knew what he was going to do. And so he got mad at the newspapers. He said, I'm going to show them what a healthy guy I am. He gets back outside. He gets even more sick. Now he gets pneumonia, and he's dead 30 days after he took office.
That's crazy.
The shortest presidency ever. So for the first time, a president dies, and the vice president takes over, and that guy's John Tyler. And everybody got mad at him because he did the opposite of what Harrison did. Because, you know, presidents and vice presidents are supposed to be pretty tight. You know, like if something had happened, you know, like when Kennedy died, Johnson took over and they did the same thing because, you know, they're buddies like that. Well, Tyler took over. He's like, psych, I don't like this guy that I took over for. I'm going to do everything the opposite of him. And so everybody hated Tyler, and Tyler was gone after 3.5 years. Very, very weird guy, Tyler. While all this is going on, you have a massive wave of immigration coming to the U.S. You have two things working here. You have things that are called push factors and things that are called pull factors. Can somebody tell me the difference between a push factor and a pull factor? I mean, you can guess. You don't have to be sure. I'm just trying to get you guys to interact a little bit.
So like a push factor as in like with states and stuff?
Well, a push factor, like when you're immigrating, you're coming from another country to the United States, right?
Oh, I know. I think I know.
All right,
So
go.
like, isn't so push factor like when you're going to a different state, and like pull factor is when you're migrating from a state.
Well, push factor is something that is in your country, or it could be in your state too. You know, like if you're like, man, I don't want to live in North Carolina anymore. I want to go somewhere else. You know, something that makes you decide. Hold on a second. I can stop something real quick. All right, I'm good. So a push factor is something that makes you decide that, hey, my country isn't good enough for me to stay here, or North Carolina isn't good enough for me to stay here. I'm going to go somewhere else. And whatever that thing is, that thing that says, I got to move somewhere else, that's your push factor. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And so a pull factor is after you've already decided you're going to go, now you have to figure out where you're going to go, right?
Right.
So the thing that makes you decide, hey, I'm going to go there because that place has this stuff that's going to make life better for me and my family, that's your pull factor. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. Oh, so kind of like if a farmer is living in a city or like a very populated area, and like he's like, this ain't a good way for me to make money, but if I go over here to Massachusetts or Tennessee or Georgia or someplace like that, I can start profiting off the crops I make.
Yeah, that would work. You have two big places that immigrants are coming from around this time period. And this time period, we're talking about the 1840s and the 1850s. And the two most frequent places people are coming from are Ireland and Germany. Ireland has a really big push factor. People are starving to death in Ireland. Like they're literally starving to death.
Mm.
Hold on a second. So, you know, you got to get out of there. You got to take care of your family. Ireland was so messed up back then. You could take 4 people, and every one of them, this is what would happen. One person out of the 4 would move to Britain. Why Britain? Because they're close by. They speak English, and Ireland is actually run at that time by Britain. The other one is going to go to America. All right, and we're going to figure out why that is in a minute. The third one lucks out, everything is okay. The fourth one dies. So that means you got 4 Irish people and 2 of them leave and 1 of them dies. I mean, that's pretty brutal. I mean, that's a lot more brutal than what we're dealing with now, you know what I mean? Yeah. So the Irish, that's what's pushing them out. In Germany, what's pushing them out is you had a bunch of college kids who wanted Germany to become one nation, which it wasn't at the time. There was like 20 little German states had their own kings and princes and people like that, and they didn't want to give up their power. And when these college kids tried to unite the country under one leader, these princes and kings of these other states said, hey, we're going to kill you for rocking the boat. And so a lot of these college kids left Germany and came to the United States. Why are they coming to the United States? Because in the United States, no one's going to bug you about what you did back over in Europe. You know, the United States, and to a large part, this is still true today. You can come to the U.S., you can start over. Nobody cares what you went through back in your home country. It's a fresh start. And, you know, you have more of an opportunity. A lot of Irish and German immigrants became very successful, became business owners. Some of them became very wealthy. And so that's your pull factor. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. While this is going on, there is a big problem with immigration. A lot of Americans then, just like today, hated immigrants. Okay. Any thought processes on why that may be?
Because they may think that they came here to do some bad stuff, I guess.
Okay. Trying to think. That's one of the things they were thinking, especially the Irish, they thought that. Because the Irish were Catholic. And the whole Catholic thing was a lot more looked at back then versus now. Does anyone know who's in charge of the Catholic Church?
The Pope?
Correct. And the Pope, according to Catholic beliefs, is like the representative of Jesus. Like he is God's mouthpiece. Okay? And so if you go against the Pope, more so then than today, but still they kind of believe this, if you go against the Pope, you're not just going against a guy with a weird looking hat. You're going against who?
God.
Correct. And if you go against God, you're risking damnation and hell and all that stuff. And so the American people, almost all of whom at that time were Protestant instead of Catholic, said, hey, we don't trust these Catholics. You know, the Pope's going to tell them what to do. The Pope is going to say, hey, go against the United States or you're going to hell. And so a lot of people then did not trust the Catholics. That's been a big thing in American history. That's why we've only had one Catholic president out of 45. A lot of people don't trust him. So that's a big thing. The other problem was, and this is still very much true today, is it's this idea that immigrants who come to the United States are desperate for jobs. Okay? They don't have a lot of money. And back in the day, there is no welfare system. There's no safety system to help people who don't have jobs. So immigrants need to get a job right away, which means what kind of pay are they going to accept?
Any type.
Exactly. They'll take the lowest pay they can get because any job is a good job when you're desperate. And so you have this idea that these immigrants are going to come and they're going to take jobs away from poor people, you know, because a poor American at that time might make like 5 cents a week. And that's about how much they would make, about 5 cents a week. And so you might have some guy from Ireland show up and say, please, sir, I'll take any kind of job. Will you give me a job for 3 cents a day? I got 6 kids I got to look out for. I don't know what I'm going to do. And so all these Americans are like, oh, these Irish taking our jobs. And they get angry at the Irish. You know, just like today you have the same idea. You know, immigrants are going to come to America in 2020 and take jobs away from Americans. So that whole idea has been around for a long time. And you have a political party form over this idea. They're called the Know Nothing Party, because if you ask them, hey, are you part of this party that hates on immigrants? They'll just look at you weird and go, I know nothing. I don't know what that is, but that's what they would do.
That's crazy.
So, yeah. So, last little part, and we'll be done with the notes, and I thank you all for bearing with me, is after the Mexican War, there is this big problem about what to do with the land. And I'm going to try to show you that in a minute if I can get it. Well, yeah, that'll work, I think. So the problem is, remember, let me project this up real quick. The problem is remember you had that Missouri Compromise line, right?
Yeah.
That said everything north of that line was going to be free. Well, now that we had this war with Mexico and we took all of this land away from Mexico, the South is like, hey, maybe we'll get some land out of this. All right. And so the big problem is going to be what is going to be done with this land. And so you have different ideas. You have a guy from Pennsylvania called Wilmot who says, let's ban all of this land for slavery, so all of it'll be free land, never passed. Then you have another guy called Stephen Douglas who says, let's let the people decide. Like the people who live here will vote, the people who live here will vote, they'll vote. Whatever they vote, that's what they get. So if they vote to be free, it's free. If they vote to be slave, it's slave, and so on. And you have Martin Van Buren trying to make a comeback as president. And he says, well, let's keep slavery back here where it already is, but let's not have it spread out to the West. All right. What complicates all this is in 1849, you get the gold rush. All right. Do I got any football people up in here?
Yeah, I know a little something.
All right. Who's the football team out in San Francisco?
I think they're 49ers.
Correct. And what color are their helmets?
Red and gold.
Correct. Because they're based off of the gold rush. In 1849, they find gold in California, and all these people from all over the world run out there and try to find gold and get rich. And some of them find gold, most of them don't, but the ones who do, they got to, sell the gold, right?
All right.
So the closest city to where the gold was San Francisco. And San Francisco went from being like a little sleepy village the size of Welcome or Denton or something to a giant, well, it's not giant. I mean, Greensboro you don't think of as giant, but I mean, compared to that, it's giant. You know what I mean? So it like explodes in a couple of years. And now California wants to be a state. And because it's got all these people in it. And so now the question is, what kind of state is California going to be? Because remember, Missouri, we balanced it 12 on 12. All right. Now it's 15 on 15. So whatever California becomes, that's going to break the tie. Half the country is going to get pissed off. What are we going to do? And so now Henry Clay again comes back. And Henry Clay says, this is what we're going to do. Hold on, I got to project this so you can see it. So California becomes a free state. Now you broke the tie. It's 16 on 15. Some people said, hey, why don't we cut California in half and have a north and they're like, no, let's just have one big free state of California. Utah and New Mexico, which was part of that war with Mexico, that's going to be popular sovereignty. So the people in Utah will vote. The people in New Mexico will vote. If they vote to be free, they're free states. If they vote to be slave, they're slave states. But we don't have to stress about it today because hardly anybody lives there yet. And then we're also going to ban the slave trade in Washington, D.C. But if you own slaves in D.C., you can keep those slaves. Now, so far, the South is really pissed off because the South has lost all of this land for free states and slave states. and all this stuff. So Clay has to do something to calm down the South, which means he's got to piss off the North, which
All
is what this does. This map I'm showing you here is the Underground Railroad, where slaves would escape during this time. Before this time, all a slave had to do was run to Illinois or Pennsylvania or Ohio, and they were free. But Clay says, hey, I hear these guys are mad. Let's help them out. We're going to pass a fugitive slave law that says that slave hunters can chase slaves anywhere in the North, which means it's no longer safe to stop in Philadelphia, New York, Boston, Chicago. Where do a lot of these arrows wind up?
Over there in I think it's just Canada.
Yeah, because Canada is not part of the United States, correct?
Correct.
Does anyone know who still controlled Canada at this time?
The British.
Correct. Very good. And so slave chasers couldn't chase you into Canada. That could cause a lot of problems, maybe even war with the British. And so that's where slaves had to run away to now. It was no longer safe to stop in the United States. You had to go all the way to Canada. Niagara Falls, still to this day, is seen as a big symbol of the Underground Railroad, because if you could get across the Niagara Falls, you were a free man. The Underground Railroad, you guys know who's the most popular person as far as that goes?
Harriet Tubman.
Very good. While this is going on, the U.S. bought some land in southern Arizona and New Mexico to try to build a railroad that would go across the entire United States. So I'm going to show you that real quick. I think, no, I don't. I keep turning it off, and I got to keep turning it back on. So this land here that's in yellow, that's southern Arizona today and southern New Mexico. And the idea was going to be that you would build a railroad from California through that land out into Texas and going all the way across the southern United States, and that would make the South a lot of money. All right, the South thought it was some kind of trick. The South never took it seriously. Then you have Stephen Douglas, that guy who believed in popular sovereignty, come up with a new idea called the Kansas-Nebraska Act, where you were going to take that unorganized territory and split it into two territories, Kansas and Nebraska. Can you guys see this map okay?
Yeah.
All right. So now you look at the map, and you can have slavery in a lot more places than you can have before, right?
Right.
I mean, you can have slave states all the way up into Canada now almost. And so there's this big controversy about it. And what happens is he thought the people would peacefully decide, but instead what you have, especially in Kansas, is you have a lot of these slave states send people in there, so when they vote on it, they'll vote to be a slave state. And then you have people in Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, they send people in and have them vote to be a free state. And whenever these people meet each other, what are they going to do to each other?
Fight.
Yeah, they're going to fight each other. Some places they're even going to kill each other. And so this whole place is going to be called Bleeding Kansas, because you have people fight and kill each other in Kansas all throughout the rest of the 1850s. A lot of people consider it to be like a rehearsal for the Civil War. And it gets so bad that you have this dude called Charles Sumner who almost gets beaten to death in the U.S. Senate. And I'm going to try to find, yeah, there we go. That's the one I want to use. So Sumner, the guy who's like laying on the ground with his head smashed open, he got beaten almost to death on the floor of the Senate. And you see the guys in the back, some like this guy looks worried, but these guys are like laughing at him or whatever.
Yeah.
All right, because the Southerners wanted him to get beaten up like this, and the Northerners are trying to get him to stop it. And the reason this guy almost beat him to death is because this guy here, Sumner, who's laying on the ground, he had smack talked this guy's uncle. He
Wow.
said, "Hey, this guy, the guy he was talking smack on, he says, man, he's got like some kind of crush on slavery. He'll let slavery, lean up on him and hang out with him. Man, I don't know what he does with that slavery, And so the friends of this guy's like, hey, they went over to the house because this guy's a member of the House of Representatives, and they're all in the same building. So he runs down the hall. They're like, hey, you know what he's saying about your uncle? He's like, what do you mean he's saying about my uncle? So he came and he beat him over the head over and over again.
That's
And
tough.
yeah, and this guy who beat him almost to death, the South saw him as a hero. The South said, hey, that guy got what he deserved, and that's just how it is. And he got reelected to the House even after he almost beat this guy to death.
Mm.
I mean, it lets you know that, things are getting out of control in the country. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
So, this is supposed to be kind of setting up the atmosphere of this idea that we're going to have a civil war pretty soon, and we will. The notes that you're supposed to read for tomorrow and Wednesday are going to be the notes that take us over the edge and into civil war. And then we're going to start on the Civil War at the end of this week and talk about it a little bit next week. That kind of makes sense?
Yep.
Does anybody have questions on anything today?
Is it okay that we turn in the warm-ups late?
Yeah,
Or-
I'm not penalizing the warm-ups for being late because I know a lot of you guys are taking care of siblings or, grandparents, or some of you guys, they're calling you in for jobs because they know they don't have school. So I'm trying to be flexible with you guys as far as that goes. I post the zeros at the end of the day, but when you get around to doing them, I adjust them. I haven't given anybody late credit or anything like that.
So like, what about the 30 questions?
The 30 questions, the unit 4 is past due. Unit 5 is due, I think, on Friday of this week. So basically, like I said, it's your choice. Like I was telling Taz earlier, you can either do the 30 questions as a Google Doc and just email that to me, or if you already wrote them by hand, you can take a picture of what you wrote. As long as the picture is clear enough I can read it, you can send the pictures to me. And if you do the worksheet, you just take pictures of the worksheet and send that to me.
All right.
Remember, that's 15% of your grade, so that's holding down several of you guys as far as the grade goes until that gets turned in. Anything else?
That's all for me. That's it.
Okay. Just remember, I'll have office hours Tuesdays and Thursdays at 3 o'clock. If anybody has any questions, you can always email me anytime, and I'll get back to you. And that's pretty much what I've got. All right. If nobody's got anything else, I'm going to sign off in a minute.
All right.
All right, y'all take care.
All right, you too.
All right, be safe. Bye bye.
All right.